The biggest issues across America. Thanks for joining us for this special Faith Nation. In Washington, I'm Caitlin Burke. As Democrats look to maintain control of Congress come November, one voting bloc they'll have to win over is Latinos. But that might not be easy. Signs indicate that demographic is moving to the right. Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka brings us that story from Nevada.
Are Latino voters shying away from Democrats? The demographic has been highly sought after and will continue to be by both parties as we head into November. And the work is already being done on the ground here in Nevada.
Do you think I could leave this at your door? I work with Make the Road Nevada.
Door after door in the sizzling heat of the Las Vegas summer.
You guys gonna vote early this year or in election day? Probably election day.
Mauricio Garcia knocks on doors for Make the Road Nevada, attempting to persuade prospective voters. The conversations vary from immigration to inflation to health care.
And our Una del Movimiento cards, right?
Civic Engagement Director Jessica Padron is well aware of the inroads made by the GOP and worries about an exodus of Latino voters to the right. She's concerned Democrats may have taken this key voting bloc for granted and need to wake up.
I do feel that while some of the policies may not be very popular from the Republican Party, they are investing way more and doing outreach offices in these communities. They're doing events in these communities. The Democratic playbook has not changed. They're still doing the same, what I call mariachi politics, which is a taco truck, some mariachis in the same little couple corners. And that doesn't reach when you have, for example, a Nicaraguan community, Cuban community, other groups. I think it's really important that we engage all these voters and not just say, well, they're automatically going to vote Republican or they're automatically going to vote Democrat. It's about who talks to you, who makes you feel good, who educates you, and who's there for you. Not just during the election period, but after.
Nevada could become ground zero where the true impact of a movement is revealed, possibly signaling which party will go on to control Congress after the midterm elections. In 2020, Latinos made up more than 400,000 eligible voters in the Silver State, a number that's projected to make up about 1 out of 5 votes cast here. Both parties would like the numbers on their side. Political insider and Nevada Independent editor Elizabeth Thompson says it would be unwise for Democrats to focus on a singular issue like immigration, with issues like inflation and rising costs squeezing all Nevada voters.
But the numbers don't lie. One of the reasons that Donald Trump won in Nevada last time around was because he got a larger share of the Hispanic and Latino vote than most people expected him to. I think that was a little bit of a wake-up call for the Democrats.
And the trends are hard to ignore. Joe Biden lost ground with Hispanic voters in 2020, while Donald Trump made 10-point gains nationwide. Republicans are trying to keep that momentum going in 2022. The Libre Initiative is focusing its ground game on the economy. Libre's Eddie Diaz says anxiety over the cost of living can be tied directly to the party that's in power now.
Talking about how this year we're going to pay over $5,000 more in taxes. We're going to pay like $1,200 more just in gas, close to $500 more in groceries. And they're taking notice of that. And they know who's in power, which administration has control currently, and they're getting turned off.
Democrats took another hit in June when Texas Republican Mayra Flores won a special election in a heavily Latino House district that had traditionally voted blue.
We cannot accept the increase of gas, of food, of medication. We cannot accept that.
Flores is getting national attention now, and Pastor Samuel Rodriguez believes her win is just the beginning.
Florida, Texas, Nevada, even California, we saw the flipping of certain districts, very strong progressive districts, flipping red, not even going purple, going from hard blue to red. And there was one common denominator. These districts were primarily over 60% Hispanic populated.
Rodriguez is an influential voice as leader of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, which represents more than 40,000 churches nationwide. While he welcomes this trend and believes it's rooted in faith values, he says it's premature to anoint the GOP as the party of Latinos.
As more and more whites shift towards the left, more and more Latinos are shifting towards the right. So be careful in wanting to deport the future of the conservative movement. So, that sort of language, tone, rhetoric, it's important that for Republicans to be cognizant and aware of that.
Back on the ground in Nevada, Marco Hernandez considers himself part of the shift. A candidate for one of the seats on the Clark County Commission, he ran as a Democrat last election cycle and came up just short. He switched to an independent since then.
I'm actually one of them. I went from being a Democrat to a nonpartisan for the same reason that everybody feels like, both party lines are blaming each other for work that needs to be done and nobody wants to do anything about it. People are fed up and they want to see change. They don't want to see the same old politics.
Now, one of the reasons that both parties are so focused on the demographic, the Latino population has quintupled in the country in the past 50 years. Nevada could be an indication of where at least some of those voters are going. In Las Vegas, Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Tens of thousands of migrants flooding the southern border, and each one has a harrowing story. Meet the volunteers who are helping them survive after this. The U.S. is experiencing record high numbers of immigrants this year at the southern border. And it's not just government agencies responding. Faith-based shelters are also stepping in to meet the demand. Heather Sells traveled to El Paso, Texas for a first-hand look at the role ministries play at the border.
These are the early morning sights and sounds from the kitchen at this Baptist migrant shelter. The beginning of a busy day as some 60 parents and children need breakfast, plus a ride to the airport or bus station.
We give them a hot meal, we give them clothes, hygiene.
Pastor Kelly Knott oversees the ministry.
They're coming from Haiti, Chile, Brazil, Turkey.
A true melting pot is overflowing at the El Paso border these days, with authorities apprehending tens of thousands of migrants each month. Local churches and ministries are stepping up.
El Paso churches and other faith-based groups host migrants at 14 sites, and they are hoping to open more in anticipation of greater numbers in the months ahead.
We are now seeing a ramp up of the number of families.
Ruben Garcia has been receiving migrants for over 4 decades at Annunciation House, one of the leading faith-based shelters on the border. He has watched numbers rise this year as countries like Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba refuse to take back those the U.S. expels. And the Biden administration allows more with safety and persecution fears to cross over.
We're seeing those nationalities that cannot be expelled increasing. And so, like today, where immigration is releasing 470 refugees to us.
Garcia is motivated by his faith, and specifically God's love for the poor.
The God of creation identifies first and foremost with the least among us. So, if we want to discover our own holiness, if we want to discover a depth of life, a sense of purpose, then we need to place ourselves among those that God identifies with first and foremost.
Garcia organizes hospitality sites for migrants just released from immigration processing. He has created the network of local shelters, calling on churches like Pastor Kelly's to provide cots, food, showers, and transportation. More than 80 Baptist churches support this location. Pastor Kelly says serving migrants paves the way for the sharing of the gospel.
At the end of the day, I think that's what it's all about. Really, no one really cares how much we know, but how much we care.
Martha Lay is one volunteer serving in this small army.
As a Christian, I think that we need to be helping our brothers and sisters.
Lay helps provide fresh clothes and listens to the travelers' stories of hunger, violence back home, and desperate journeys, like one dad who carried his disabled daughter over a desert mountain.
He said they had to climb up, and so it was very narrow, and they had to carry the little girl, and he said he almost fell.
Along the U.S.-Mexico border, these shelters showcase tremendous cooperation between Border Patrol and local ministries. El Paso-based migration advocate Dylan Corbett says it's one of the untold stories that could pave the way for more permanent solutions.
This is a community where a lot of people are Border Patrol agents. This is a community where a lot of people work for immigration enforcement. And we know that we have to find solutions. And so we work them out at the local level. That's what gives me hope. That's what gives me confidence that one day we'll get to some real reform in Washington, D.C.
For now, Garcia watches border trends and numbers climbing as he pursues a mission to open more shelters in other cities.
I'm hoping that church communities in both Denver and Dallas are listening.
The goal, prevent a backlog of migrants unable to find flights and bus rides out of El Paso. At Pastor Kelly's shelter, hope is in the air as these migrants board a church van bound for the airport.
This is just one of the stops on their journey from wherever they're coming from. But we want to make sure that when they stop here with us, especially on this border town in El Paso, Texas, in the United States, they see the love of God.
Reporting in El Paso, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Coming up, a look at how to help protect kids from the onslaught of pressures faced at school. Many students are back in their school buildings for the first time since the pandemic. But issues like mental health concerns and tech addiction can threaten the potential for classroom success. Charlene Aaron looks at what experts say parents can do to protect their children.
Years ago, the biggest concerns of life for children used to be limited to homework, making friends, and bath time. Times have certainly changed with a rise in issues ranging from online dangers to transsexuality. As problems appear more spiritual in nature, experts are urging parents engage with their children and steer them in the right direction.
Anxiety, depression, panic disorder has gone up among kids that I've seen in my practice and throughout. And I know that right now many counselors have long waiting lists already, and the school year has just started.
Dr. Danny Huerta of Focus on the Family told CBN's The Prayer Link, many young people must face these unprecedented challenges without a key spiritual component.
When you remove God, there's confusion, there's chaos, and right now it really saddens me to watch counselors and others really push kids towards deciding psychologically their gender.
Huerta says it is vital parents stay informed about these issues and talk openly with their children, warning if they don't, others with different values will.
You want to step in, listen to your kids. What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are their worldviews on it? And then stepping into that from a biblical truth, starting with the beginning of male, female. What is the difference between male, female? How did we start with that in Scripture? And then from there, starting to have just open conversations, dialogue.
Dr. Kathy Koch, founder and president of Celebrate Kids, told CBN's Faith Wire that families should also engage the power of God for their kids.
We have compassion. If they're not yet saved, if you're a Christian family but your child is not yet saved, again, they don't have a love for God that would compel them to righteousness. That's one of the things we got to pray over our kids, a greater love for God.
Prayer is also needed when it comes to the impact of technology. According to a study by Common Sense Media, nearly 62% of teens spend more than 4 hours a day on digital screens. That amount almost doubles for a third of teenagers. When it comes to children and adolescents, 23% admit they can't go a day without using their computer, cell phone, or playing video games. Meanwhile, Huerta encourages parents to take the role of protector seriously as their children navigate through all that's happening around them.
There are a lot of protections that you can find online. Make sure you're putting those on the computers and devices. Have conversations about the limits and the necessity to have limits on those, including bedtime, the car, meal times, and then modeling it as a parent.
a strategy that also makes for better family connection. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Rest for weary hikers and weary souls. We take you to the so-called Cathedral of the Wild when Faith Nation continues. Every year, 3,000 people take on the challenge of hiking more than 2,000 miles along the Appalachian Trail. They're called through hikers, and they cross 14 states on their journey. Now, a book explores what happens when humans venture into what's known as the Cathedral of the Wild. Wendy Griffith recently traveled to the oldest hostel on the Appalachian Trail to meet the shepherd of this flock.
Since 1976, thousands hiking the trail stretching from Springer Mountain, Georgia to Mount Katahdin, Maine, have stopped at the Church of the Mountain in Delaware Water Gap, Pennsylvania, for support ranging from the physical to the spiritual. Reverend Sherry Blackman has captured many of their stories in her book, Tales from the Trail, stories from the oldest hiker hostel on the Appalachian Trail.
We have people from all ages coming on the trail, young, old, in between. And I believe that there's always an underlying spiritual reason for people to be on the trail. And some of them don't know why they're doing it, but what I have found consistently is people are in some kind of transition. They're wondering what's next for them. They're grieving a loss of some kind.
Reverend Blackman has led this flock since 2014, telling us the hiker ministry is what first attracted her.
Because we're providing shelter, water, showers, sleeping space, counsel if they want it, first aid if they need it, to strangers from all over the world. So having come from a background as a journalist, I was completely drawn to this church that had 1,400 hikers that pass through a year and stay with us.
During our visit, we met Austin, trail name Pirate, a 27-year-old restaurant manager from Florida who always dreamed of making the trek.
I was only gonna do Georgia. I had 2 weeks off of work, but I hit the trail and I was like, you know what, when's the next time I'm gonna be on the trail? So I, just decided to keep on going, see how far I could make it.
Pirate, who started in Georgia in late April and is now more than halfway to Maine, says one of his most memorable moments was an encounter with a baby deer.
Hey, precious.
And he followed me for like 3 miles.
Do you feel like you're encountering God out here?
There's certainly a higher power. There's the saying on the trail provides. 4 or 5 days ago, someone had very generously put a cooler with, 6 things of water in it. And on the inside was a note, and it said, through hikers, if you need resupply, place to shower, place to stay, call this number free of, whatever. The generosity and the culture of the people on the trail is like perfect. Makes me want to keep going.
31-year-old Maggie, trail name Skittles, hiked the trail with her husband in 2019.
I was a nurse and I was feeling a little bit burnt out, and I thought the trail would just be a great way to surround myself with nature and peace and quiet for the most part, and not have to deal a lot with people. But it was the people, the connections we made with people that meant the most to me, and really just kind of changed my entire viewpoint.
Did you come back more in love with your husband or less in love?
More in love, for sure. For sure. It was an adventure of a lifetime, and I'm so glad that I had him to share it with.
Others, like 21-year-old Levi, trail name Lat, short for latitude, hope to find emotional healing and peace on the journey.
I can finally be happy with who I am. I mean, it's something I've never experienced in my life. At least I don't ever remember.
In addition to bunks and hot showers, the church hosts a free hiker's feed each Thursday during the summer.
We have potluck dinner. People from community as well as church come, bring food. We never know how many hikers we're going to have. We could have, I think about one night we had up to 50. There's no agenda.
By the time AT hikers get here to the quaint little town of Delaware Water Gap, Pennsylvania, they've already trekked more than 1,000 miles. This is the halfway point, whether you're hiking northbound or southbound.
And Reverend Sherry says that's significant.
With every step they take, there's a shedding, like a soul shedding. It's like they're getting rid of stuff. They realize what they don't need to live. They realize what really connects them to life. So I think it's significant because sometimes I think it takes 1,000 miles to kind of let go of stuff. There was a guy here, he had walked here from Georgia, and he said that by the time he got to our place, he had finally forgiven his wife for her infidelity.
So why did you write Tales from the Trail?
I wrote it because I wanted to celebrate the ministry of the church. I wanted other churches to realize that, look around your community. They were down to like 15 people in the 1970s. And they're like, who's coming through? How do we minister to those in our town? And that's when they saw these hikers resupplying on the church lawn. And that's what started it.
Whether it's the need for adventure, the thrill of the challenge, or deep personal healing, Blackman says the so-called Cathedral of the Wild often leaves these brave explorers to the only one who truly satisfies.
There's a story in the book about a young man who's a potter, well-known potter, and he was walking the trail because I think he was really having this restlessness in his life. And he said by the time he got to Mount Katahdin, he realized it was Jesus and it was only Jesus.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News, Delaware Water Gap, Pennsylvania.
That's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. Have a great weekend.